I'm Sohee. I'm a Korean wife and a Korean teacher, and I was able to speak Korean quite fluently within the first year of my study. Other than that, I love to learn languages and have a master's degree in education. From my experience of teaching hundreds to thousands students, the common problem is that they don't study effectively. And what do I mean by that? Yes, they spend a lot of time studying, they are hardworking, but they don't know what to do with the vocabularies and grammar that they have studied. So why are you not able to use the knowledge that you have? In a lot of studies, research has found that the steps to acquire a language are actually as the following. First, we have input, which includes listening and reading. And after, we will have output, which are writing and speaking. First, I will talk about listening, as it is the first step to learning a language. Like a kid, you learn the language by surrounding yourself with the language. So just try to listen to it as much as possible. If you're learning Korean, then try to make some Korean friends and listen to how they say things, watch Korean dramas, variety shows, and movies, cartoons, anything that you can get access to, so that you will have a wide range of vocabulary as a result. When you're just starting out, choose the topics that interest you, because those are usually the topics which you're familiar with and easy to understand. Let's say if you're interested in fashion, then maybe you can find a drama that talks about fashion and maybe learn words like clothes. Or maybe you're a foodie, so maybe you can watch a variety show, like a cooking show, so you can learn some vocabulary about food. As you get better at Korean, try also to listen to where the words are being used. In which context are they being used? Are they used usually in casual situations or formal situations? As simple as asking a person to eat, there are different ways to say that. 밥 먹어, 밥 먹어요, 밥 드세요, 진지 드세요, 밥 처먹어. And if you use them in the wrong context or to the wrong person, you are likely to get into big trouble. For reading, choose a book or an article that really interests you, and make sure that at least 70% of it you should be able to understand, or else it is too difficult for you and it's not suitable for learning. Remember, don't try to check all the unknown words whenever you come across them. It will drive you nuts. Instead, what you should do is to practice inferencing from the context to guess the meaning of the words. Focus on the content and also learn about the culture as well. Most importantly, enjoy the reading process, because that's the only way to get to read another book or another article, because you find it fun to read and rewarding when you learn something new. For me, I like to read Korean comics from Naver because they are easy to get access to and they are fun to read. With all the cute characters and illustrations, it's entertaining to read and you can really immerse yourself into the stories. As they are usually in dialogue forms, I find them more interactive and more like real-life Korean, as the usage are what the Koreans really use in their daily lives, as compared to an article where you can find it in your Korean book. Now that we are done with the input, let's focus on the output, because that's where most of the students have difficulty dealing with. And the key to study Korean effectively is really to understand that you need to be able to output the things that you have learned during the input process. Instead of remembering things like a robot, knowing when and how to use them is more important. If you have remembered how and when a word is being used and an example of how Korean used it, you will have a better chance at getting it correctly when you use it. Now let's talk about writing. Let's say you've learned a lot of useful phrases or expressions from your Korean dramas or variety shows that you've watched, and you try to show off your new Korean words and expressions in like your topic exam writing and things that you've aced it, when in fact those phrases are probably not your best choice when you're writing. And why? Well, because those words and phrases or structures are actually meant to be used in speaking. So you may actually want to use them in your daily conversations with Koreans instead. On the other hand, if you learn from reading or listening to news, the expressions that you've learned there, you can try to use them in your writing because they are more formal and more polished and formatted. Another useful source to learn how to write better Korean is just to read Korean books, to see how famous writers really write and learn some useful expressions from there and try to make it your own with your ideas. If you're just starting out to write, you can try to find some writing templates to help with your structure. Try practicing writing by following the templates, and as there are guidelines, they will help you express your thoughts in Korean more smoothly. Last but not the least, speaking. So this is the part where when I ask my students, which part of the Korean that you think is the most difficult? Most of them will answer, speaking, I think, because I don't really get the chance to practice. I mean, I don't have any Korean friends and I don't live in Korea, and the only time that I get to practice my Korean speaking is having Korean lessons with you, Miss Sohee. By the way, if you also want to get some Korean practice and lessons with me, there is a link down below in the description box where you can book some Korean lessons there. But on a side note, when I was studying Korean, I didn't have a private teacher who I can practice speaking Korean to. So what I did was actually talking to myself in Korean, which some of you may think, oh, she's weird, she's talking to herself. But trust me, this works very well as I've tried that. Try to just think in Korean and think of a way to put your ideas out as a sentence in Korean. This will force you to think about how to say the word and how to structure them into one complete sentence. When you're repeating the process over and over, you will think in Korean just like a habit. And when you're confident enough, try to use them to communicate with other people, not just you. Or maybe use it with your Korean teacher to see if you are using it correctly. Try to get as many opportunities as you can to speak Korean. I remember back then when I was still in university, I joined the Korean Society just to make more Korean friends. And I hang out and travel with them and ultimately become friends with them. Or maybe you can participate in some language exchange as they are very popular these days. I know learning a new language is not easy and it takes a lot of time. So for the time being, instead of focusing on the hard part, focus on the fun part. Enjoy the process. Instead of translating word by word from English to Korean, it just makes more sense to understand the nuance in Korean and about the culture, which will also help you in understanding the language itself more. If you're interested in learning more about how to think in Korean, you can watch this video here, which will tell you more about how to train the Korean brain. See you there! Bye!